The string lights were glowing, the cake had just been cut, and I was standing by the gift table with my present in both hands when my son laughed and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "What a ridiculous gift, Mom. You were always useless." 80 people heard him, and I smiled like I always did. If you've ever swallowed your hurt to keep peace in the family, stay with me. What happened after that moment changed the rest of my life. I don't remember putting the gift down. I just remember the sound in my ears, like when you stand up too fast and the room tilts for a second. People around us chuckled, the kind of polite laughter folks use when they're not sure if something is a joke or a wound. My daughter-in-law, Melissa, pressed her lips together and gave a little wave of her hand like he was just being funny. "Oh, Daniel," she said lightly, "you know how he jokes." Jokes, I nodded, still smiling. I've had a lot of practice with that smile. It's the one I used when my husband was in the hospital pretending I wasn't scared. The one I used when bills came in higher than my paycheck. The one that says, "I'm fine, don't worry about me," even when I'm disappearing inside. "It's nothing," I said. "He's right, it's silly." But my hands were shaking. Not enough for anyone to notice, just enough that I tucked them together in front of my purse. I could feel the eyes sliding away from me, guests turning back to their drinks, their plates of catered chicken and green beans, the band starting another soft oldies song. The party moved on. I stayed stuck in that sentence. You were always useless. That's when I noticed my grandson, Tyler, watching me from across the yard. He's 14, tall and all elbows now, with that serious look kids get when they're trying to understand adults. He looked like he wanted to come over, but Melissa called his name and he turned away. I told myself it was better that way. Children shouldn't have to fix things grown-ups break. The gift sat on the long folding table with the others. Shiny bags, tissue paper, big bows. Mine was wrapped in plain cream paper with a thin blue ribbon. I'd done it myself at the kitchen table downstairs, smoothing every fold like it mattered. Inside was a small quilt, hand-stitched over months when my fingers would cooperate. Each square came from one of Daniel's old baby clothes I'd saved all these years. The yellow sleeper with ducks. The little red flannel shirt he wore in our first Christmas photo after his father died. Ridiculous. I stayed another hour. I hugged people. I told Melissa's sister the food was delicious. I told the neighbor from 2 houses down that the backyard looked beautiful with the new deck. I played my role. That's what I've always been good at, fitting into the corner where I cause the least trouble. By the time I slipped through the back door into the house, my cheeks hurt from smiling. The music outside sounded far away once the door shut, like it belonged to someone else's life. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, looking at the counter clutter, plastic cups, a knife with frosting on it, a half-empty bottle of soda. Evidence of a celebration. I used to host birthdays like this, back when we lived in our little ranch house on Maple Street. Daniel running through the sprinkler with neighborhood kids, me chasing them with towels, my husband manning the grill like he was the mayor of the block. I sold that house 6 years ago, so Daniel and Melissa could afford this one in Brookside Estates. Better schools for the kids, they said. A real chance. I told myself walls were just walls. Family was what mattered. My room, no, not room. The basement suite. That's what the real estate flyer had called it when they first showed me. A private in-law suite. It sounded almost fancy, until you realized it meant one small window near the ceiling and a bathroom where the pipes knocked at night. Still, I was grateful. I told everyone how lucky I was to be close to my grandkids. And I meant it. I still do. I went down the carpeted stairs slowly, holding the railing because my right knee has been stiff lately. The music thumped faintly through the floor. Laughter burst up every now and then, muffled and warm. I used to be part of that sound. Now I listened to it like someone outside in the cold. In my little sitting area, the lamp was still on from that morning. My recliner, the crocheted throw, the side table with my pill organizer neatly lined up for the week. Normal, safe, small. I sat down and let my face fall. It felt heavy, like I'd been holding it up with strings. Maybe he didn't mean it, I told myself. Maybe it just came out wrong. Daniel's always been quick with words, not always careful with them. When he was little, he once told a neighbor lady she looked tired and puffy. He didn't mean harm. He just didn't know yet that truth can bruise. But he's not little anymore. He's 42. That's when another thought slipped in, one I tried to push away. This isn't the first time. There were the little comments. Mom, you wouldn't get it. That's not how things work anymore. Just leave it, we'll handle it. Each one small, easy to excuse, but stacked together, they built a quiet message. Stay in your place. Be grateful. Don't need too much. I looked at my hands in my lap, the thin blue veins, the faint scars from years of sewing. These hands fed him, dressed him, held him through fevers and heartbreak. These hands worked double shifts at the diner after his father's heart gave out in the hardware store aisle. I never once thought of that as heroic. It was just what mothers do. Still, sitting there in the hum of the basement, I felt something shift. Not anger exactly, something quieter, colder, like a door inside me had opened just a crack. Upstairs, someone started clinking a glass for a toast. Daniel's voice carried through the floorboards, cheerful, confident. Everyone listening to him. I wondered if he'd mention the quilt later when he finally opened my gift. I wondered if he'd even recognize the little red flannel square. And then a thought came that made my stomach flutter in a way I didn't like. For the first time since I moved into this house, I asked myself a question I never thought I would at my age. What if I didn't have to stay? I was already awake when the house went quiet the next morning. After a party, there's always that strange stillness, like the walls themselves are tired. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the pipes tick and settle, and for a moment I forgot what day it was. Then I remembered the lights, the laughter, the word useless, and my chest tightened all over again. I got up slow, joints stiff, and made my way to the basement bathroom. The mirror showed a face that looked older than it had the day before. Same gray curls, same soft lines around my mouth, but something in my eyes had shifted. I looked aware, like I'd finally read a sign that had been hanging in front of me for years. Upstairs, I could hear cabinet doors and the low hum of the coffee maker. Melissa always woke early on Sundays, even after late nights. I waited a few minutes, giving myself time to put my morning face on, the calm one, the agreeable one, before climbing the stairs. The kitchen smelled like reheated coffee and sugary frosting. Half the cake sat on the counter under plastic wrap. Melissa was at the sink in leggings and one of Daniel's old college t-shirts, scrubbing a platter. "Morning," she said without turning. "Morning, honey." My voice sounded almost normal. I was proud of that. Daniel came in a moment later, rubbing his neck. "Man, I shouldn't have had that last beer," he muttered, opening the fridge. He glanced at me. "Hey, Mom." Hey, Mom. Like nothing had happened. Like words didn't linger in the air after you said them. I poured myself some coffee and sat at the small breakfast table. "Party was lovely," I said. "You two did a great job." Melissa smiled quickly. "Thanks. It was a lot, but worth it." Daniel leaned against the counter, scrolling on his phone. "Did you see what Uncle Rob posted already? Guy takes more pictures than a wedding photographer, he chuckled. I watched them move around the kitchen that used to feel partly like mine. I used to pack Daniel's lunches at a table like this. Peanut butter sandwiches cut into triangles because he swore they tasted better that way. Now I sat at the edge, careful not to be in the way. My eyes drifted to the living room where the gifts had been moved. The wrapping paper was gone. Boxes and bags were stacked neatly by the wall. I searched for the cream paper with the blue ribbon. I opened most of the presents last night, Melissa said, following my gaze. Still a few left. Oh, I said, wrapping both hands around my mug. No rush. But my heart gave a small, hard knock. I told myself it didn't matter. It was just fabric and thread, just old baby clothes stitched into a blanket nobody asked for. Daniel finally looked up from his phone. Mom, you okay? You look tired. I'm fine, I said automatically. Then, after a pause, I added, just a long night. He nodded, already halfway back into whatever was on his screen. That's when I noticed how easily the moment passed for him. For me, the night still sat heavy on my shoulders. For him, it had already dissolved into pictures and leftover cake. After breakfast, Melissa started listing things that needed doing. Laundry, a grocery run, Tyler's practice schedule for the week. She said it all the same way she always did, like we were a team. But there was a tightness under her words. Mom, she said finally, wiping her hands on a towel, we're really going to need you this week. I picked up an extra shift Thursday, and Daniel's got that late meeting. I hesitated. My right hand was throbbing faintly, the arthritis acting up after all the party prep I'd helped with. I can still take Emma after school, I said carefully. But Tyler's getting big. Maybe he could take the bus home some days? Melissa's smile thinned. It's just easier if you get them both. You know how crazy afternoons are for us. Easier. I nodded. Of course, I'll manage. That's when I felt it again, that quiet shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just a small voice asking, and who manages you? Later, back downstairs, I sat in my recliner with my pill organizer and a heating pad on my hand. Sunlight pushed through the little basement window, catching dust in the air. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in a while, Mrs. Alvarez. She answered on the second ring. Hello? It's me, I said, Eleanor. Eleanor Marie Thompson, she said warmly. I was just thinking about you yesterday. How was the big party? I opened my mouth to say fine. I always say fine. But the word stuck. It was something, I said instead. She was quiet for a beat. Mrs. Alvarez has always known how to hear the space around words. You want to tell me about it, mija? And just like that, sitting in my little basement with the hum of the dehumidifier behind me, I did. Not every detail, not the full sting, but enough. When I finished, she sighed softly. You gave that boy everything, she said, but you forgot to save something for yourself. Her words settled deep. I looked around at my small space, my folded sweaters, my stack of library books, the framed photo of Daniel at age 6 missing his front teeth. My whole life reduced to a corner of someone else's house. I don't even know what something for myself would look like anymore, I said. Well, she replied, why don't you come see me this week? Get out of that basement for a day. We'll sit in my kitchen, drink coffee, and remember who you were before you started shrinking. I laughed softly, but my eyes filled. Maybe I will. After we hung up, I sat very still. Upstairs, I could hear Melissa vacuuming. The machine roared back and forth over the rug, steady and loud. That's when my gaze drifted to the old metal lockbox under my side table. I kept papers in there, Birth certificates, insurance forms, things I didn't look at unless I had to. I don't know what made me pull it out right then. Maybe it was Mrs. Alvarez's voice. Maybe it was the way Daniel hadn't even remembered his words from the night before. I set the box on my lap and turned the little key. Inside were folders, yellowed envelopes, and at the very bottom, one thick envelope with my husband's handwriting on it. I hadn't opened it in years. My fingers hovered over his name, traced in blue ink. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe just memories, maybe nothing at all. But as I slid my finger under the flap and eased the papers out, I realized something that made my heart start to pound. There are some things you forget you have until the day you finally need them. My hands trembled as I unfolded the papers. The first sheet was familiar, our old life insurance policy, the one Frank had insisted on keeping even when money was tight. "Just in case," he used to say, tapping the folder like it was a secret weapon against bad luck. I remembered the check that came after he died, how I used most of it to pay off the mortgage on Maple Street and keep Daniel in his school, his life steady, while mine felt like it had cracked open. But behind that copy was something I didn't remember at all. A letter from the credit union, dated 3 years after Frank passed. I sat back in the recliner, the paper trembling in my fingers, and read slowly. Unclaimed balance, secondary savings account, automatically rolled into a long-term certificate. I blinked, read it again. Somehow, in the blur of grief and bills and raising a teenage boy alone, I had forgotten about a small account Frank opened at the credit union where he worked part-time in his 20s. I remembered him mentioning it once, a little nest egg, nothing big, but life had swept me along, and I never followed up. At the bottom of the page was a more recent statement. The amount listed there made my breath catch. It wasn't a fortune, it wasn't beach house money or cruise ship money, but it was enough. Enough for first and last month's rent somewhere small, enough for deposits, enough for a little cushion I hadn't had in years. I sat there, the basement quiet around me, and felt something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Possibility. Right on its heels came guilt. "How can you even think of leaving?" the old voice in my head whispered. "They need you. The kids need you. Good mothers stay." But another voice, softer and newer, answered back. "Good mothers don't have to disappear to prove they love someone." Upstairs, I heard a door slam and Melissa calling Tyler's name. Life moving along like always. I folded the papers carefully and set them on the side table, my heart still beating too fast. I didn't tell anyone that day. I moved through the afternoon like usual, snacks at the counter, homework questions, reminding Emma to put her lunchbox by the sink. But everything felt slightly different, like I was seeing the house from just outside myself. That evening, when I lay in bed, I stared at the low ceiling and imagined a place with windows at eye level, a place where I didn't have to listen for footsteps overhead to know where I stood. 2 days later, I took the bus across town to see Mrs. Alvarez. The ride itself felt like a small rebellion. I hadn't taken the bus alone in years. I watched neighborhoods slide past the window, brick storefronts, laundromats, little churches squeezed between houses. Places that looked more like my old life than Brookside Estates ever had. Mrs. Alvarez opened her door before I even knocked. "I know that knock," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like coffee and fabric softener. Her kitchen was just as I remembered: yellow curtains, a table covered in oilcloth, a bowl of oranges in the center. We sat with our mugs, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't rush my words. "I found something," I told her, sliding the copy of the statement across the table. She adjusted her glasses and read. Her eyebrows lifted. "Eleanor Thompson," she said slowly. This isn't just something. This is a door. I let out a shaky laugh. A very small door. Small doors still open, she said. We talked for hours about aging, about pride, about the difference between helping and being taken for granted. She told me about a senior apartment complex not far from her church. Clean, safe, income-based. A waiting list sometimes, but not always. You could have your own place, she said gently. Your own key, your own quiet. The words settled over me like a blanket I didn't know I'd been cold without. On the bus ride back, I held the idea carefully, like something fragile. I wasn't planning to storm out or make a scene. I just wanted room, dignity, a space where my existence wasn't measured by how useful I was. That night, after everyone went to bed, I went back to the lockbox. Under the insurance papers, I found the copy of the check I'd written years ago, the one that helped Daniel and Melissa with their down payment. Gift, it said on the memo line. Not loan, not shared investment. Gift. I had never thought twice about it. He was my son. Of course I'd help. But seeing the word there now made something inside me sink. I had given up my house, my independence, and on paper, I had no claim to any of this. For a moment, grief washed over me, not just for Frank, but for the woman I'd been. So eager to keep everyone afloat that I forgot I needed solid ground too. But strangely, the sadness didn't stay long. In its place came clarity. If I had no legal tie holding me here, then I also had no legal chain. The next morning, after the kids left for school, I sat at the small desk in the basement with my phone and dialed the credit union number on the statement. My voice shook a little as I confirmed my identity, answered security questions I hadn't thought about in decades. Yes, Mrs. Thompson, the woman on the line said kindly. The funds are yours. We can help you transfer or withdraw whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready. I hung up and sat very still. Upstairs, Melissa's footsteps crossed the kitchen. A cabinet door closed. Normal sounds, familiar sounds. But for the first time since I moved into this house, I realized something with a calm that surprised me. I didn't have to tell them yet. And that small, quiet secret that I had a choice felt like the first piece of myself I'd gotten back in years. I didn't sleep much the night after I called the credit union. Not because I was worried, but because my mind kept wandering somewhere new. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw sunlight coming through a window that wasn't pressed up against the ceiling. I saw a front door with my name on a little label inside the mailbox. I saw a kitchen table where I could leave my teacup out overnight and no one would move it. It felt selfish and wonderful. The next week, I told Melissa I had a doctor's appointment and took the bus back across town. My heart pounded the whole ride, like I was a teenager sneaking out instead of a 72-year-old woman looking at apartments. Mrs. Alvarez met me on the corner, her purse tucked under her arm like we were off on an adventure. The building wasn't fancy. 3 stories, brick, with a small sign out front that read, Meadowview Senior Living. There were flower pots by the entrance and a bench where 2 women sat talking in the sun. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. A bulletin board held flyers for bingo night, a flu shot clinic, and a bus trip to the farmer's market. I stood there longer than I meant to, just looking. A place built for people in this season of life, not tucked away in someone else's basement. The manager, a soft-spoken man named Harold, showed us a 1-bedroom on the 2nd floor. Beige walls, a little kitchenette, a real window that looked out over a patch of grass and a maple tree just starting to turn red at the edges. It's small, I said, stepping inside. It's yours, though, Mrs. Alvarez said quietly. That word echoed in me. Yours. Harold explained the rent, the application, the income guidelines. I listened carefully, asking questions I never thought I'd be asking at this age. Could I hang pictures? Yes. Was there a laundry room? Down the hall. Were grandchildren allowed to visit? Of course. I pictured Tyler slouched on that little couch, Emma coloring at the table. Visits, not obligations. Love without the constant feeling of being in the way. On the bus ride home, I held the brochure in my lap like it might disappear. Fear crept in around the edges now. What would Daniel say? Would Melissa be angry? Would the kids think I was leaving them? But under the fear was something steadier. I deserved to breathe in my own space. That evening, Melissa was tense. "Mom, I forgot to tell you, I picked up another Saturday shift," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. "We'll need you with the kids all day." My mouth opened automatically to say okay. Then my hand throbbed, sharp and hot, and I remembered the doctor's words about inflammation and rest. "I can help for a few hours," I said carefully, "but I really need to slow down some. My hands aren't what they used to be." Melissa's jaw tightened just a little. "We're all tired," she said. "That's just life." I nodded, but something in me didn't shrink this time. That night, I filled out the application with hands that trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of what it meant. Mrs. Alvarez's nephew drove me back 2 days later to drop it off. Harold said there was an opening sooner than expected. A tenant had moved closer to her daughter. "Give us a week or two," he said. "We'll call." A week later, while I was folding laundry downstairs, my phone rang. "Mrs. Thompson? This is Harold from Meadowview. If you're still interested, the apartment is yours." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just sat there on the edge of the bed, one of Daniel's old t-shirts in my lap. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm still interested." I didn't tell Daniel right away. I signed the lease first. I set up the transfer from the credit union. I bought a small set of dishes from a thrift store, blue flowers on the edges, and a new teacup just for me. It felt almost silly how happy that teacup made me. Then, one evening, Melissa came downstairs without knocking. Her eyes went straight to the stack of boxes by the wall. "What's all this?" she asked. I took a breath. "I'm moving," I said gently, "into a senior apartment, not far from here." Her face went blank. "You're... what?" Daniel came down a few minutes later, called by the edge in her voice. He looked from the boxes to me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "Mom, what is she talking about?" "I found a place," I said. "Small, affordable. I think it'll be good for me." He ran a hand through his hair. "Why would you do that? We have plenty of room." Plenty of room. I thought of the low window, the careful quiet I kept, the word useless ringing across the backyard. "I need a little space of my own," I said. "I'm not going far. I'll still see the kids, but I want to live somewhere I'm not just fitting in." They both started talking at once, about childcare, about expenses, about how this didn't make sense. I let them speak. For once, I didn't rush to make them comfortable. Finally, Daniel looked at me, really looked, and said, "Is this about the party?" "I was joking, Mom." "I know you think you were," I said softly, "but it hurt. And it wasn't just that. I think I've been shrinking for a long time." The room went quiet. Moving day came with clear skies and a cool breeze that smelled like fall. Mrs. Alvarez's nephew brought his pickup truck, and 2 women from her church came to help carry boxes. Melissa stayed upstairs most of the morning. Daniel hovered, unsure what to do with his hands. Tyler helped me carry a lamp to the truck. "Grandma," he said quietly, "are you mad at Dad?" I smiled at him. No, sweetheart. I just need my own place for a while. He nodded like he understood more than I expected. Emma cried when she saw my quilt folded on top of a box. But that's yours, she said. It's coming with me, I told her, hugging her tight. And you can come see it any time. When we pulled up to Meadowview, my stomach fluttered, but not with dread, with something like hope. The apartment looked smaller with my things inside, but warmer too. My chair by the window, my photos on the wall, the quilt spread across the little couch, sunlight catching the faded red square from Daniel's childhood shirt. That first evening, after everyone left, I made tea in my own kitchen. I sat at my small table, listening to the quiet. No footsteps overhead. No feeling like I had to stay useful to earn my place. Just me, breathing. A week later, Daniel came by alone. He stood in the doorway looking around. It's nice, he said finally. I like it, I replied. He rubbed the back of his neck, just like he used to when he was a boy who knew he'd done something wrong, but didn't have the words yet. I didn't realize how things felt for you. I should have told you sooner, I said. That part's on me. We didn't fix everything in that moment. Life isn't like that. But something softened. He started calling before coming over. The kids visited on Sundays, and when they left, the quiet felt peaceful, not lonely. Sometimes I sit by the window with my tea and think about how long I believed love meant staying no matter what. Now I understand something different. Love can still be strong, even with a little space around it. Dignity doesn't make you distant. It just makes you stand up straight again. I wish I'd learned that sooner. But I'm grateful I learned it at all.